Hey everyone, I'm so glad you joined me. If you're new here, my name is Bobby, and if you'd like to know more about me, you can always look in the About section here on my channel. Also, I hope you would watch the little short video I have, Welcome to Gardening on Taylor Mountain, and that will tell you more about me. So I want to say Happy New Year. Can you believe it's 2023? I mean, really, 2022, where did you go? It just flew by. But 2022 was a good year for me in the garden. I hope it was a good year for you too. I wanted to share with you all of the things that I grew from seed in 2022 for my cut flower garden. Now, I've had a cut flower garden for the last 2 years. It's been dedicated completely to cut flowers. For giving bouquets away and for drying. I've been able to do quite a few projects over the last couple of years as far as giving bouquets away. But I wanted to just talk with you a few minutes, and I'm going to shoot this video in 2 parts because if I tried to do everything all in one video, it would be way too long. I really got bitten by the cut flower bug in 2021, and I dedicated all of my garden raised beds to the cut flowers, like I just said. Before that, I was mainly a pollinator garden with quite a few veggies, I guess. I wasn't great at growing veggies, but I had some success, with your carrots and potatoes, onions, squashes, your lettuces, fruit like tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that, But once I got bit by that cut flower bug, it was like, oh boy, I want all my space to grow these cut flowers. Now we have added 6 new raised beds for this coming growing season. And I told my husband, I said, I really need some more raised bed space so I can get back to growing some veggies. And he said, yeah, I really, really want you to grow some veggies again. But as I'm looking at all of my seeds that I'm going to be starting and looking at the space, I'm like, I'm not sure where I'm going to be able to fit in my veggies, but I may have to add a couple more beds. Anyway, that's another subject. When you have a cut flower garden, you get the double duty of drawing in your pollinators as well as being able to use your flowers for cut flowers, for selling or giving away or passing on to neighbors or whatever you do with your cut flowers. But that's one of the things that I really love about having cut flowers. So for part 1 of the video, I want to talk to you about cool flowers and the cool flowers that I grew in 2022. A lot of them I will be repeating this year, 2023. Cool flowers are just as the name implies. They like cooler temperatures. They thrive in cooler temperatures. In fact, they will lull during the heat of the summer. If they last that long, they will actually lull. A lot of them will pick up again in the autumn time and start blooming. It's the 3rd year of growing cool flowers, and I've kind of gotten my head wrapped around about when to start them, what to do with them, but it took me quite a while. So if you're new to cool flowers and if it sounds all confusing to you, don't worry, we've all been there, and some of us are still getting there and just about getting a little bit past that. First part of the cool flowers that I'm talking to you about are flowers that I direct seeded into my raised beds in the autumn time. Now I am in zone 6B, so you can look on the back of the seed packet to see what that seed or what that plant is cold hardy to. And because I'm in zone 6B, a lot of them are cold hardy in my area. So I could sow them in the autumn. They would become tiny little plants and they would overwinter, and then in the spring they would take off. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is Dara, also known as wild carrot or ornamental carrot. I believe that in some states Dara is banned because it's maybe an invasive. I'm not 100% sure about that. You'd have to check with your state. You can also succession sow Dara in the spring. You can sow it in the spring. Actually, one year I sowed it in the spring and it did just fine. Dara makes a great filler flower. It looks a lot like Queen Anne's lace. In fact, it's called false Queen Anne's lace. And it does shed just slightly, but not nearly as much as Queen Anne's lace. So I really enjoy having Dara. Another thing I love is Bupleurum. Bupleurum is a great filler flower. It's got a little teeny yellow bloom on it, and it just makes a great filler flower. Another thing that I direct sowed in the fall was Nigella. Of course, I love Nigella. The blooms are just so dainty, and the seed pods make great addition to your bouquets as well, and they also dry. The little seed pods dry really nicely too. Larkspur is another one that I had in my garden in 2022. Larkspur does best if it is fall sowed. Now, depending again on your zone, I'm in zone 6B, remember, and for me it does best to be fall sowed. So that way the plant really gets established and takes off. I've done both. I've sowed it in the spring and in the fall, or in the actually late winter and in the fall. Larkspur is so beautiful. Larkspur dries well, and just a beautiful spiky element in your arrangement. If you're in a zone 6B like me, then you do want to sow your Larkspur in the autumn, 6 to 8 weeks before your first frosting. One of everyone's favorite, Bachelor button. I sowed those in the autumn, 6 to 8 weeks before my first frost. And you can also sow those in the springtime. I've done both, and I will sow some more in the spring of the Bachelor button. It just makes such a sweet little accent flower in your bouquets. Now, as far as what I started indoors in the autumn to be transplanted out into my raised beds was Feverfew. I love Feverfew. I've also started it in the springtime, but for me in my zone 6B, it's best to put it in the ground in the autumn, let it just overwinter, and it does better for me in the zone 6B that way. Rudbeckia, you can also start Rudbeckia in the spring. Now, the type of Rudbeckia I'm talking about is the what I use for annual Rudbeckia. The picture I'm showing you now is the Prairie Sun Rudbeckia. I've also grown Cherry Brandy, Cherokee Sunset. There are so many Rudbeckias that you can grow, just a huge variety of them. And they do really well here in my zone 6B if you start them in the fall indoors and then transplant them outside before the first frost. Another cool flower that I grew last year is Yarrow. Now, I treat my Yarrow as an annual. I know that it is a perennial for a lot of us, but it doesn't do real well for me. Maybe I've planted it in places that are too damp or something like that to use it as a perennial. So I just like to use it as an annual, and I mostly use it for drying. For the 2023 growing season, I did start some in the autumn indoors under grow lights, and they're in the garden beds now, ready to go for spring, when spring comes on. So you can, in my zone 6B, you can plant them out in the autumn time, and they do very well. Okay, now, so as not to confuse you more, the cool flowers that I start in February or March, sometimes even in January, would be the Snapdragons. And if you grow Snapdragons, one little hint, Snapdragons do not like any bottom heat. If you use heat mats, which I do, then you don't want to put any bottom heat on your Snapdragons. And remember that your Snapdragons take a little bit longer to germinate. They take a little bit longer to grow on under your grow lights. They'll just stay little teeny plants for a long, long time, and you'll think, oh man, when are these Snapdragons ever going to do anything? But once they get a little bit taller and it's time to transplant them out, they just take off. And your Snapdragons can go out into your garden even before your last frost. My last frost date here in my zone 6B is around April 23rd. So a lot of these spring sowed flowers that I start indoors can actually go out into my garden beds before the last frost because they're that tough. That's why they're called cool flowers. It's another entire category. If you've never grown cool flowers, it will just open up a world of another growing season to you. Another flower that I grew in 2022 and I will start again in 2023 in February is Pincushion Flower. Love them so much. And I also love using their seed heads as dried flowers. Just so fun. So I will be starting those indoors and growing them on under the grow lights and then transplanting them out into the garden. In that same sort of category as the Pincushion flower is the star flower or Scabiosa. The starflower, I actually had some that self-seeded themselves over the summer, so I just transplanted the little starts and made them in kind of rows, and I just wanted to see what they would do like when the cold hit, and to see if I could overwinter those in the garden without having to start them inside or direct sow them in the spring. And my little starts are, I'm not sure they're going to make it. We had -2 degrees Fahrenheit was our lowest temperature during the week before Christmas. And then we had some single-digit nights and some teen nights. All of my other fall sowed, direct sowed cool flowers are doing great, except for the starflower. I think they got nipped, and I'm not sure they're going to come back, but that's totally fine. Once you grow starflower, you will never need to buy seeds again. They produce a gazillion seeds. So I have plenty of seeds left to sow my starflower, and I can direct sow those in the very, very early spring. Even before my last frost date, I can direct sow some of the seeds in the garden, and they will be just fine. Another cool flower that I grew in 2022 was the straw flower. Of course, who doesn't love straw flowers? 2022 was not the best year for my straw flowers. I'm not sure what happened. The years prior, they did great, but 2022, not so much. I had a good, decent harvest, but not as much as I had in the past. The straw flowers, I will start under grow lights for 2023. I will start inside, grow them on under grow lights, and start them in February. I usually start my cool flowers around February 23rd, maybe a little bit sooner. And I start them indoors, like I said, under the grow lights, and grow them on under the grow lights. It gives me plenty of time, the 8 weeks before my last frost date, or sometimes I even push it out to 10 weeks before my last frost date, just depending on what I'm starting for the cool flowers to go out into the garden. Now, your cool flowers won't start actually doing their thing and blooming until more towards the end of May, even towards the 1st of June. But, I would love it if they would like bloom at the beginning of May or something like that, but normally no. But you're going to have these blooms just earlier than you would your warm season tender annuals. Now, the last cool flower I want to talk to you about that I grew in 2022 is Bells of Ireland. Bells of Ireland. If you've grown Bells of Ireland, and I've heard of people that said, oh, my Bells of Ireland self-seeded. Well, mine didn't. They're not anywhere out there in the garden. I only got one seed in 2022 to germinate, and I went through all of these steps. I watched a video on how to germinate your Bells of Ireland, and in a paper towel in the fridge, and all of that, and I only got one seed to germinate, so I babied that seed like you would not believe. Now, your Bells of Ireland do not like their root system to be disturbed. Once that one seed got large enough for me to handle, I put it in a biodegradable pot with some seed starting mix or some potting soil or something like that, and I just let it grow, and I babied it, and I babied it, and I let it grow on under my grow lights. Finally, it was time to plant it outside, so I took the pot and everything, because it was biodegradable, and planted it in the garden, and then I still babied it, and I watched it, and I watched it, and it grew and produced beautifully, lots and lots of stems for me. So I really, really love Bells of Ireland. What I think I'm going to do for 2023 is give my seeds about a 2-week cold period in my freezer or fridge, and then I'm going to probably direct seed them a little bit before my last frost date, I think is what I'm going to do. So and I may give it a try, just starting a few more in some biodegradable pots, and I'm not going to go through that paper towel and all that business again, doing that in the fridge, because that was a lot of work. But I do love the Bells of Ireland. They're just so unique, and they dry really well. So I do plan to have that again in my 2023 garden. So I think I mentioned a few moments ago that all of the fall sowed things that I direct sowed in my raised beds for this coming growing season have done just beautifully. And as I said, the only thing that I'm not sure is going to make it is the starflower. But I was so pleased because I I wanted to put them through their paces. I wanted to see what they would do. I don't sell my flowers, so I don't need to depend on that income. So if I lost them all, then I could just, you know, re-sow them and replant them in the springtime. But I was just so happy that they all, the Bupleurum, the Nigella, the Dara, the Larkspur, Bachelor buttons, everything, the Yarrow came through with flying colors. And I don't cover mine. I didn't even cover mine with leaves like a lot of people do. You can do. I gave it no protection at all. So we even had snow, we had frost, we had freezing rain. We had maybe a little bit of hail, I think, one day. So they just did great. Now we're just beginning to go into winter, so we'll see. But this is what I did in 2020 for 2022 for the things that I had fall sowed in 2021. Getting my dates mixed up here. And they did just great. So these did just great. So I'm 2 years there in the running of things doing really good for my fall sowed, direct sowed flowers. So anyway, I'm really happy with how they're all doing. Whew, that was a lot of talking. Take a deep breath, right? I think we covered all of the cool flowers that I grew in 2022 and what I will be growing in 2023 and what I've already have going on. So that's all I can think of about those cut flowers. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you've stuck with me this far in this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. And I appreciate all of your comments and your kind words to me. So thank you so much. And if you haven't already joined me on Instagram, please go check me out on Instagram. The link to my Instagram account is in the About section here on my channel. And I will also put that in the description below, as well as all of the cool flowers that I've talked about here. So friends, I'll see you in the next video when we talk about all the warm season tender annuals that I grew from seed in 2022. And until then, happy gardening. Bye-bye.